But me, your man, Louie T, welcome to the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine Day Number 2 analysis. Continued coverage of the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine here on the Louie T Network. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on the program. Day 2 of the Combine featured quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends. It's a big day. Obviously, when you're talking quarterbacks, they're going to dominate the conversation. A quick overview. Quarterbacks, I thought, were outstanding. I'm going to talk about each and every single one of the ones that caught my eye in the Combine today. Receivers, not a great group. I'm going to tell you right now, I was really disappointed with the receivers. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not going to be. And we knew that going in. And I think the phrase that I keep hearing from everyone is, hey, this is a deep receiver group. You can get value in the mid to late rounds, but it's not a top-heavy group. I'm here to tell you, I'm not even blown away by the depth of this draft. If you don't get a good guy early in this draft, you could be stuck getting a developmental receiver later on in the draft that never actually ever develops. So we'll see. There were some guys that stood out, though, at the receiver position. I don't want to make it seem all bad, but me being a guy that watches the receiver position extremely close, I wasn't blown away nor floored by the receiver position in this draft this season, looking at the guys that I saw in day 2 of the scouting combine. And then finally, the tight ends. Tight ends always get the short end of the stick. They throw them at the end of the most important day on the offensive side of the football, and they literally get the last 30, 45 minutes of the program. I love Greg Olsen. I love his insight, and I'd like to have him up there more talking, because I learned so much more about the tight end position and what they're looking for from that position from him in just the last 30 minutes of the show than listening to Steve Smith and Michael Irvin talk about nothing when regarding the receivers for literally 4 hours of the day, essentially. So I think the tight ends always get the short end of the stick. They don't even get the big boys to throw to them. They get the combine arms, if you will, the Allens and the quarterback from LSU. Those kind of guys are throwing to them, not the big names. So tight ends always get shitted on, it seems like. But I actually thought the tight ends were better than advertised, and I thought this was a really down tight end year, and it still is when you compare it to last year, where you had a bunch of athletically gifted studs everywhere. Gerald Everett, obviously Evan Ingram in the first round. Just the tight end position, David Njoku, it was littered last year with a bunch of athletic freaks. That's not the case this year, but this group isn't that bad. So, quick overview: quarterbacks, they were outstanding. I'm going to talk about them at great length. Receivers, not so much. Tight ends, better than I expected. So let's start with Group 4 of the Combine, which was Group 1 of the quarterbacks, Group 1 of the receivers. Quickly go through the quarterbacks, then we'll go through the receivers, and then we'll kind of go through the whole entire group. Group 1 featured Josh Allen, Riley Ferguson, Sam Darnold, Luke Falk, and Lamar Jackson were the major names in that first group of quarterbacks. Allen ran a 4.75 40, which is right in line with Carson Wentz, which is right in line with what I thought he was going to do. I told you, you're talking about a height, weight, speed type of quarterback, a guy that, when you're talking measurables, it's going to be hard to top Josh Allen. He showed off the arm strength with about a 70-yard pass when they were running basically the 9 routes down the sidelines, which is ridiculous. I thought he was outstanding. I thought Josh Allen was outstanding. And again, you know how I feel about Josh Allen. I'm a little biased, so I'm not going to act as if I'm not a little biased, because I am. But, I won't sugarcoat it. If he would have come out and stunk it up, I would have said so. And he was outstanding. And I thought he came out and he showed a lot of people why. Yeah, the completion percentage wasn't the greatest at Wyoming, but if you get me, you coach me up, you got something here that you can't teach these other guys. I got all the stuff that you want in a quarterback. All you got to do is draft me. And so, to me, he pushed the ball into the court of all of those teams in the top 10 that need a quarterback. He said, hey, I'm here. And I think he's going to do the same exact thing in his pro day. Again, at the pro day, he's going to be a little bit more scrutinized because then they're going to be looking for accuracy. You don't care about accuracy because you're not throwing to your guys. It's not scripted. Obviously, it's a little bit different. Your pro day, it's your day. You script it with your guys. So you're in your comfort zone. Everything's supposed to go exactly the way you want it to go. So you're looking for a high completion percentage. That's where he's going to have to show the scouts, I can be accurate with the football, but the arm strength was never questioned, and he showed that off. And I actually thought he was pretty accurate for most of the day as well. Riley Ferguson, he threw the ball well, but again, he's one of those guys could be very erratic with the football, sprays it all over the place. I don't love the system that he comes from at Memphis, a lot of shorter passes. Again, same thing that I thought plagued Paxton Lynch coming into the league. I think the same thing is going to happen to Riley Ferguson. They play in an offense that doesn't really lend itself to transitioning well to the National Football League. And so I don't love Riley Ferguson as a quarterback prospect, but we'll see what happens with him. I thought he threw the football well throughout the course of the day, however, and he does have a big enough arm to be able to get the football to all parts of the football field. Sam Darnold, again, if you listen to my podcast, I was not happy. Mike Mayock wasn't happy. Nobody was happy. DJ wasn't happy. Mike Miller wasn't happy from Bleacher Report. Nobody was happy. Or excuse me, Matt Miller from Bleacher Report. Nobody was happy with the fact that Sam Darnold didn't throw. Matt Miller said that's not going to change his mind. He's still the number one quarterback in his grouping. I don't think that's going to change the mind of anybody who likes Sam Darnold. If you don't like Sam Darnold, then yeah, this is something that can push you over the edge if you're on the fence about him. But again, I always tell people this, when you're watching film and you have a bias with someone, whether you like them or you don't like them, you've got to push that aside. Because if you're looking for something in a guy that you don't like, you can find it watching tape. You can nitpick and find whatever you're looking for. If you don't like a guy, you can find things to not like. But you got to go into watching tape objective. Even if you don't like a guy, you've got to be open-minded. And with Sam Darnold, if you don't like him, then this may be the final straw that breaks the camel's back. Him not coming out and competing. See, he's not a competitor, okay? But if you liked Sam Darnold coming into Saturday, this isn't going to change your mind. If you like the tape, if you like the player, if you like the kid, you sat down, you talked to him for 15 minutes, you put him on the whiteboard, everything checked out, this isn't going to change your mind. But I was disappointed that he did not throw, but he ran a 4.85. I thought he would run a little bit faster, but that's still a good time for a guy that is extremely athletic in and out of the pocket. Luke Falk and Lamar Jackson didn't run. Falk didn't run because he's probably not that fast. Who cares? But Lamar Jackson not running, I thought that was more of a political statement that he made. Because remember, yesterday, in day one, there was a report out by Peter Schrager that teams asked Lamar Jackson would he also work out as a receiver, and at his press conference he said, I'm not working out for anything but quarterback. I'm a quarterback. There's nothing else to talk about. Good for him. Okay, if you listen to my podcast, then you know I feel the exact same way, and I'm glad that he clarified that. And everybody seems to be on the same page. Mike Mayock, Daniel Jeremiah, everyone seems to think, look, you're a quarterback. Make sure everybody knows that to be the fact and treats you as such. And so I think the political statement that Lamar Jackson was making is, not only am I a quarterback, but I'm not going to tantalize you with a 41-inch vert or a 11-inch broad and a 4.47 40. I'm not going to do all those things that makes you think even more, oh man, this guy could definitely play receiver or running back. Hell no. I don't even need to do that because you know I'm athletic. You know I can run. You know I can jump. All right? I want you to know I can throw. Well, Lamar Jackson had an up and down day. The ball came out of his hand very fluttery all day. There were a ton of wounded ducks. Steve Smith called one of his passes a pheasant. He struggled to throw the football, and I thought he was nervous and uptight. I thought he put too much pressure on himself to come out. He didn't zip it. I know this guy's got arm strength, and I just wanted to see him let it loose. Just cut it loose, bruh. And I thought he was so fixated on, got to get my footwork right, and I got to show these guys that I can be accurate, that I thought he put too much undue pressure on himself, and the ball placement wasn't great. The ball didn't come out of his hand. There weren't many tight spirals that came out of Lamar Jackson's hand, Ball was fluttering all over the place. A lot of balls were underthrown because they weren't spirals. It was not a good day for Lamar Jackson throwing the football. He was very up and down. And there were times, though, where the first pass would be a duck, an ugly one at that, and then the next two passes would be absolute darts on the money, and you say, he's getting it. But it was so inconsistent throughout the day. Still doesn't deter me. What that says to me, and I've already told you this, and I told you this on Thursday in the Draft Room Live. I said, look, he's a first-round pick and a first-round talent if you're going to conform your offense to fit his skill set. If you're not going to do that, then he's not a first-round pick, and he's a project because he's not ready to be under center, even though, and I've watched Lamar Jackson a little bit, and I was surprised as I watched some of these quarterbacks, and they were actually under the center more than I gave them credit for. He's another one of those guys that was under the center a little bit more than I expected. Still, there's a lot of work to be done there. And so you could see that with the footwork. You could see that with the ball placement. He's a work in progress. So if you're not going to conform your offense to fit his skill set, then he's not a first-round talent. Someone, however, is going to do that, and I think he's going to ultimately be a first-round pick. You go to the fourth group of receivers. This was a group that I looked at, and I honestly felt like the first group of receivers had more names in it, but really they were equally as unimpressive as I tried to make it out to be something that is not. Both of the groups were unimpressive to me, but there were guys that stood out in each individual group. So I'll run down a list of names in this first group of receivers in group number 4. Marcel Atman is a receiver out of Oak State with James Washington. Obviously, Mason Rudolph was the trigger man, and so he was the other guy opposite of James Washington. 4'6", 240 at 6'4", 216, so a big guy. Well, what you'll find with the bigger body receivers in this draft is there aren't any blazers for the most part. Equanimous St. Brown was one of the few guys that was north of 6'4" that ran a sub-4.5 40. Most of those guys that were 6'4" or better were north of 4'6", as you saw with Marcel Atman. Deion Kane ran a 4.43, receiver out of Clemson at 6'2", 202. He looked good. Did have some drops throughout the day, but he helped himself with that 40 time. We knew he was going to run fast. I thought he looked good for the most part throughout the day. 5'11", 200 pounds was Antonio Callaway, a very intriguing guy out of Florida. Didn't play the entire 2017 season. Had a credit card situation where he had credit card fraud. There are a couple of other incidents where he was in trouble with the law. So he was suspended from the Florida program in 2017. He ran a 4.41 though. And so this is a guy with punt return experience. I thought he caught the football extremely well. He's intriguing, but he's one of those guys that he scares you because this was a guy that without money was acting a fool. What happens when he gets money? I'm a little nervous. Michael Irvin vouched for him and said he was a good kid. Again, I don't know him, so I can't do that whole vouching for a guy, not vouching for a guy. All I know is what I saw on the field and what I've seen from him at Florida. There's talent there for sure. If you're looking for a return guy, he might be one of the better ones in this entire draft class, and a guy that can also help you, sort of like in that Antonio Brown mold. Same size as Brown too. Antonio Callaway is very intriguing. He's got some talent. You just got to make sure that the guy that you're getting is good enough on the field to maybe have to put up with the headaches that may come with it off the field. DJ Chark was probably the biggest winner at the receiver position of the day. And really, since the offseason for college football has gotten started, when you're talking Senior Bowl and the Combine and all of those things, DJ Chark has just put up good week after good week after good week. He's stacking them up like bricks. Had a hell of a Senior Bowl week, culminated in a hell of a Senior Bowl game, and now he goes out and runs a 4.3, 4.40, the fastest time of any receiver of the day, jumps 40 inches in the vert, and at 6'3", basically 200 pounds at 199, you're talking about a guy that's a height, weight, speed specimen. He turned some heads, and DJ Chark is as we speak, moving up draft boards in a wide receiver group that is not that strong. He's making a power move right now, and I thought he had the best day of any receiver. That includes the number one guy on the board, Calvin Ridley, who we'll get to when we get to the fifth group of receivers. Semi Cobbs Jr., 6'3", 220, 4'6", 40. I wasn't impressed with Semi Cobbs. I thought he struggled in the gauntlet drill. I didn't think he's a guy that's going to struggle to separate. And a lot of these bigger receivers, they're going to struggle to separate. And they're going to have to use their size to win. And it's so tough because these corners are getting better and better at being able to swallow up and gobble up bigger receivers that only win through back shoulder fades and going up for the football. That's why teams are combating these bigger receivers with bigger corners. And I just don't know about Semi Cobbs Jr. Wasn't impressed at all. Michael Gallup out of Colorado State, 6'1", 205. He was a guy that ran in the 4.5s. He was solid throughout the day. You see good with him. Very productive in school. Not a guy that really moved the needle for me. Again, to each its own. And he may be your cup of tea. He's not mine. I don't really subscribe to those Colorado State receivers. The jury's still out on the one that came out last year that's in Cleveland right now. And I actually liked him. But Michael Gallup doesn't really do anything for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, he just looks like ordinary people, you know. So we'll see. Then you got space guys. Remember, we talked about space guys in day one. And you got a couple of space guys here in Kiki Kote. Kute. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Kuti. It's Kiki Kuti out of Texas Tech. He's 5'8". He's 5'10", 181. He ran a 4.43. He looks the part of a little jitterbug, one of those guys that can come in and you just move him around. Again, space guy. Just get him out of space. Quandre Henderson out of Pitt. Now, I was really disappointed in his 40 because I thought he was a sub 4.5 guy. And he ran a 4.5 flat, which isn't bad. But for a guy that's 5'8", 192, I need you to be flying. Okay, I need you to be 4.42, 4.47, somewhere in there. And when you watch him on tape, you're running the jet sweeps and things of that nature, you're thinking this guy's explosive, but I got to go back and watch more tape because maybe I overrated his speed. He wasn't as fast as I thought he was. Maybe he had an off day, but at 5'8", 192, I needed him to be sub 4.5, and he wasn't, so that was disappointing. And then he made the comment that he likens himself to Tyreek Hill. First of all, bruh, you're no Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill, even on a bad day, is running a sub 4.5. All right? Tyreek Hill on a good day is 4.3 something. On a bad day, he's probably 4.44. Moses Malone 4.44. So you're definitely not him in that regard. And then Tyreek Hill has hands. I saw Quandre Henderson drop the football way too much for my liking today. So he may just be a special teams guy now. He's dynamic. And you don't have to be a burner to be electric as a punt returner. That's where Quandre Henderson may stand out and may have value at the next level as a punt returner. But I don't really see him as a guy that's going to help you as a receiver necessarily, especially at that size. Christian Kirk, I talked about on the pod how he needed to have a big day. And he needed to run. And that was going to start his day off. He needed to run well and then just had the rest of the day kind of follow suit. And he did that. He checked all the boxes off at 5'10", 201. Remember, he was the one that says, my favorite term is lacks elite speed. He said, say less, essentially, is what. Remember, I told you he went back and forth on social media with some of the pundits. And he backed up his talk. 4.47 for Christian Kirk. 20 reps of 2.25. He looks the part, man. And to me, he's the second wide receiver on my board. Now, I'm going to tell you, DJ Moore out of Maryland is making a hard charge for second. And after watching DJ Chark, I've got to go back and watch more LSU tape. And it's so hard to evaluate the LSU receivers because of the poor play with guys like Danny Epling throwing you the football. It's just so tough to evaluate LSU receivers. But that being said, I've got to go back and watch more DJ Chark tape because after Calvin Ridley, who I was not impressed with, and I'll talk about him a little bit later on, but after Calvin Ridley, because I know he is the truth, there's a mad scramble for who's second. And there's a little conglomerate there that's forming. And I think Christian Kirk may have solidified too, but I'm telling you, DJ Moore, Chark, and Anthony Miller, who didn't run the 40, is an intriguing guy. There are a number of guys who are trying to hover around and make their presence felt. But nonetheless, Kirk, I thought, did everything he needed to do to solidify himself as the second best receiver in this draft. He definitely didn't hurt himself. And if you went in thinking he was the second best receiver, you came out saying he's definitely the second best receiver. If you went in saying, I don't know about Christian Kirk, now you know about Christian Kirk. I thought he checked all the boxes. Jordan Lasley was a guy that I was intrigued by. Obviously, you watch Josh Rosen, you have to run into Jordan Lasley. You have no choice but to. At 6'1", 203, you saw him run away from guys on tape. The 4.5 40 was solid. Thought he would run a little bit faster than that, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, my problem with him on tape is that he dropped the football too much. And guess what he did at the combine? He dropped the football too much. So Jordan Lasley did exactly what I expected him to do in the combine. And so I walked away from the combine saying, you're exactly what I thought you were. You're a guy that is very inconsistent, can make plays, but he's also going to drop the football on you. And so Jordan Lasley did not, to me, help himself at the combine. He didn't hurt himself. He didn't help himself. Deshaun Hamilton, for me, was a guy that I wanted to see run the 40. He didn't. So right there, I'm a little cautious and skeptical about his speed. He's got hands, can make plays on the football. I think he's one of those mid-round sleepers. I thought he looked good doing a lot of the drills, caught the football extremely well. The question with him is how fast is he? We got to wait till his pro day to find out. So jury's still out on him, but I think he's going to be a solid mid-round receiver for someone in this draft. Sort of like Chris Godwin was last year, and if I'm not mistaken, the Bucs got him either in the second or the third last year. So he could follow in Chris Godwin's footsteps. But Chris Godwin, remember, ran at the combine and looked good and ran and had a good 40, and everything kind of fell into place for him. We got to find out what's good with Deshaun Hamilton at the Penn State Pro Day. So you go from Group 4 to Group 5 of the quarterbacks and the receivers. And so this group was the more star-studded group when you're talking quarterbacks. You got Kyle Laletta, who I'm starting to fall in love with, did not have a great day at the combine. All the work that he did at the Senior Bowl, he didn't erase it at the combine, but it kind of tempered expectations. That Kyle Laletta train was moving at a high rate of speed, and I think the combine kind of made me pump the brakes a little bit. I still like him a lot. I think there's a ton of upside there, but he did not throw the football as well as I expected him to, nor did he run as fast as I thought he ran. Now, 4.81 for a quarterback is not bad, and this guy's 6'3", 222, so he's got some size on him. But I thought he was going to run in the 4.7s, and I thought it was going to be the low 4.7s. At that, he ran 4.81. Logan Woodside ran faster than him. I didn't expect it. I knew Logan Woodside had some athleticism to him, but I didn't expect him to run faster than Kyle Laletta. So a little disappointed from an athletic standpoint with Laletta, but I know he's an athlete, so I don't worry about that. I thought he would throw it a little bit better in today's action, and he didn't. So that was a little alarming. But again, I still like Kyle Laletta as a guy that you draft and develop in the mid rounds. Remember, I was talking reckless, like, man, he's going to go through this process. People are going to fall in love with him, and he's going to end up being a third, possibly a second-round pick. I've pumped the brakes on that after watching him today. And again, I don't want to put too much stock into the combine, but for a guy that played at Richmond, you needed that steam to continue to roll on, and it didn't do that for me in day 2 of the combine. So I thought he was okay. He was not great today. Tanner Lee is a guy that a lot of people like out of Nebraska, 6'4", 218. The arm strength, definitely there. I mean, he's right up there with some of the stronger armed quarterbacks in this draft class. Obviously, Josh Allen is in a class by himself, but in that next tier, Tanner Lee is right there, and I think he's at the top of that next tier of guys that can throw it. He can hum it. And you saw him throw it, and he stroked it. At times, he threw some beautiful balls. Okay, when they were throwing that post corner, he dropped a couple of beauties over there. When they were throwing the 9 ball, he dropped a couple of beauties. When they were throwing the digs over the middle of the field. He dropped a couple of beauties in there. He can throw it. There were a couple of times, too, when they were throwing the slants. All right, when they were throwing some of these out-breaking routes, he let a couple of them fly, too. Okay, but the guy's got talent. So I see why some people like Tanner Lee. I walked away a little bit more impressed in saying to myself, I've got to watch more Tanner Lee. Here's the thing, though. Mike Mayock already forewarned me. You're going to see some turnovers that turn your stomach. And then when they showed me the Chiron with his stats, career stats, 34 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. That is not a good touchdown-interception ratio. So I know there are going to be some turnovers in there that really, really turn me off to Tanner Lee. But I still want to see what this guy has to offer. Baker Mayfield, 4.84 40. Right around where I thought he would be athletically. I actually thought that he would be sub 4.8 though. But nonetheless, I know what athleticism he has. 6'1", 215, a little bit bigger than what I thought. So that's good for Baker Mayfield to check in at right around 6 feet. Technically, he was like 6 foot and 3/4 or so. But I just rounded it up to 6'1", a lot taller than I gave him credit for. So Baker Mayfield, man, he was impressive. After Josh Allen, I walked away saying, damn, Baker Mayfield was impressive. And he threw the football with a lot more zip. And I think that was the consensus from everyone was, damn, he threw it a lot better and with a lot more zip. I thought he didn't have the type of arm strength that was going to shine with the rest of these guys. Man, Baker Mayfield was putting some zip on the foot. That dig route, he was zinging them in there. Those outbreaking routes, he was zinging them in there, man. There was a little sauce to go on those throws from Baker Mayfield. Really impressed and thought he helped himself today for sure. Josh Rosen, he did what I expected him to do. He checked off all the boxes. 6'4", 226. That's great size for him. The footwork, the mechanics, no one's going to beat him in the mechanics game, okay? His footwork, his technique, transfer of weight, all of those things, flawless. He's a prodigy. He's been doing this since he was wee bit tall. And so the guy has all of those things down to a science. I thought he threw it well. They talked about the flatness of some of his balls and the lack of trajectory on some of his passes. I saw a little bit of that, but I don't pay that any attention because on tape, I saw plenty of trajectory on passes that needed to have it. And even the passes that they were talking about being flat, they still got to the target in a great location. I thought that he was one of the few players that on the fade ball up the seam that they were trying to make it tough on the receivers to catch it on the outside shoulder. He was the only one that dropped it right in the bucket over the outside shoulder. Josh Rosen, for me, I've said this a number of times. I'm going to continue to say this all draft process long. If you can protect Josh Rosen and you can with as much certainty as you can gather, know that he loves football and you can protect him. He's the best quarterback in terms of throwing a football in this draft class. So he didn't do anything to dispel that in day 2 of the combine. Mason Rudolph, I thought he was okay. 6'5", 235. We knew he wasn't going to run very fast, and he didn't. He's not that great of an athlete. That's not his MO. His arm strength wasn't the best. There were a lot of balls that were underthrown by him. Mason Rudolph throws a beautiful deep ball, and I saw that a couple of times, especially on the post corner and the 9 ball. But those comebacks, those outbreaking routes, even the dig route, there were a couple of nice ones in there, but then there were some where the receiver had to stop and bend down and catch it. So there was a lot left to be desired from Mason Rudolph. Again, he's not a top 5. He's not in my top 5 when talking quarterbacks in this draft. So it's not a surprise that for me, I went in thinking he was right on the outside of my top 5, and he proved that at the combine in day number 2. Mike White, for me, I thought he did some good things, and then I thought there were some inconsistencies, which is what I basically said about Mike White. But I didn't know he was that big, man. He's 6'5", 224. So, and I knew he wasn't a great athlete, but I didn't know he was that big. So that's something that intrigues me a little bit with him, because I didn't see that type of size on tape. Thought he was more 6'3"ish. Didn't know he was 6'5". And the 224, that's a good size for a guy that's going to have to stay in the pocket to protect himself. And I thought he made some really good throws, man. And I saw some good things from him. But then again, for every 3 or 4 good throws, there was one where you're like, okay, Mike, what the hell is that? So you got to take the good with the bad with him. And then you've got Logan Woodside, 4'7", 940, and 6'1", 215. I thought, or 213, excuse me. I thought Logan Woodside, after Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, I thought Logan Woodside had the next best day. So he was the third best quarterback, if you ask me. Because Rosen, to me, did what I expected him to do. Woodside impressed me a lot. And you can tell he's a competitor. And he feels slighted. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He feels like he belongs. And he proved it. I really like him. And then the athleticism that he brought to the table, that 4.79, I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't see that coming. I thought he would be in the 4.8s, closer to 4.9, somewhere in there, 4.85 to 4.9. 4.79, wow. That's impressive. And I thought he threw it well all day long. Really walked away impressed with him. And he's a guy that I think could be a nice steal for somebody in the mid rounds of this draft. Undersized, obviously, at 6'1", but I don't care about that. Baker Mayfield, I don't care about 6'1". I'll take 6'1". It's when you're 6 feet, it's when you're 5'11", that's when I start to worry. 6'1", there's some 6'1s. Some guys that are listed at 6'2", they might be closer to 6'1" than 6'2". So, I like Logan Woodside a lot. And I told you that on Thursday. Anyway, I'm going to save Lamar Jackson for last. I know I didn't talk about him. I didn't talk about him for a reason. He's a polarizing guy in this draft, and I'm going to talk Lamar Jackson. Well, I did talk Lamar Jackson, I think, already. I want to talk about him a little bit more, though. Let's go to receivers in Group 5. They were really disappointing, to say the least. There were really 2 guys that stood out for me in this group. I really like DJ Moore, and I also thought James Washington did some really good things. Everybody else, wow, were they disappointing or what? Let's start with DJ Moore, though. 4.42 240. That was the one thing that I was concerned about was, all right, what's your long-distance speed? Because he's quick. He's got great hands. Also being 6 feet, 210. I thought he was going to be 5'11", 5'10", and to check in at 6 feet, 210. I already know he had a good, thick frame. So there's a lot to like with DJ Moore. He's climbing up draft boards as we speak, and that 4.4 240, that speaks volumes for him, and it goes a long way in helping him climb up draft boards. He could sneak into the back end of the first round, but he's going to go off the board relatively quick in the second. In a draft that's not that good at the receiver position, I expect everybody to go get theirs early. And I think I can see this guy coming off the board in the first round, early second at the latest. Calvin Ridley was the talk of the town. He was the guy that was creating the most hoopla, 6 feet, 189. First of all, I don't love 189. I don't. Okay? Let's get that straight right now. You 189, I want to put you in the slot. I don't want you out wide at 189. That being said, we know guys can survive out there that aren't big. Now, he's not Deshaun Jackson, but Deshaun Jackson soaking wet is about $175 on a good day. So we know guys can survive out wide that aren't big, but Calvin Ridley, to me, first of all, 4.43, that's great speed. 15 reps of 2.25. He's a lot stronger than I gave him credit for, especially at 6 feet, 189. That being said, he just needs to slow down. And I know he's good. He's still the number 1 receiver on my board. But I just thought he was going too fast. He was OC all day long. Man, was he OC. He was out of control. He was falling all over the damn place. He was coming out of breaks all sloppily. He's just got to slow the hell down. He was doing everything at 1,000 miles per hour, like his hair was on fire, and there was no fluidity. Like, even Saquon Barkley ran everything, and it just looked smooth. and it looked easy, and it flowed together. Everything with Ridley looked forced. Even his 40 looked forced. He had to go back and start 9 times total in his 2 trials. Like, bruh, just take your time. He just rushed everything. And so I didn't walk away convinced that Calvin Ridley was the clear-cut runaway number 1 guy, but I think that the rest of the class around him didn't do anything to necessarily infiltrate or penetrate that number 1 spot. Like I said, DJ Moore and Christian Kirk did help themselves enough to where I think there's a discussion to be had, but I still think that Calvin Ridley is still the number 1 guy in this draft class. And he did have a drop on a comeback as well that was not very pleasing to my eyes. Dante Pettis, I didn't see him at all. And so really was disappointed because I didn't expect him to run because I don't think he's fast. I think he's quicker than fast. He's a punt returner. He's going to help someone in that department. But I wanted to see him catch the football, do all those things. He may be injured. I don't know what's going on, but he didn't participate at all. Anthony Miller, another guy that did not participate at all. Again, I don't know what the situation was with him, but I wanted to see him catch it, run around, do some things. I didn't see him on the field at all. 22 reps of 2 1/4 though, so that was impressive at 5'11", 201. But didn't get to see him catch the football, so that was disappointing. Equanimous St. Brown, 6'5", 214. He was the only guy to run a sub-4 540 that was 6'4 or better. But I thought he struggled catching the football at times in the combine, and I thought his route running wasn't precise. There's a lot that he needs to work on. He could have used another year of schooling at Notre Dame, but nonetheless, his size, his height, his weight, his speed, they all intrigue, and someone's going to take a flyer in a draft class of receivers that's less than stellar. Someone's going to take a flyer on Equanimous St. Brown in probably the 3rd or the 4th round. So despite some of the questions that I have about him, I still think he's going to go relatively early in this draft just because of the lack of good receivers. To me, again, after Kirk, Ridley, and I got to do more on Chalk. Chalk looks good, though. Deion Kane is another guy I kind of like. But after those guys, and then you throw in Anthony Miller and DJ Moore and James Washington, I don't know if the rest of these guys are that skilled at the receiver position. Obviously, a guy like Dante Pettis is going to help you on specials. Then you got a bunch of big body guys, but they can't separate. They're not quick. They're not fast. They're just big. You got a bunch of those in this draft. Cortland Sutton didn't move the needle for me. I didn't walk away from this thing saying, yep, that's the number 1 guy, or yep, that's a first-round receiver. He didn't do anything for me. He didn't move the needle for me at all. But 6'3", 218, you can't teach that. He's a big guy. 18 reps of 2 1/4. You like that too, but limited route tree at SMU. I didn't see anything that had him stand out from the rest of the group today. So I was really looking for him to stand out because I don't know a lot about Cortland Sutton. That's not a guy that I had high on my radar. So I was looking for him to flash, to force me to go back. And I'm going to watch tape on him, obviously. But I was looking for him to force me to go back and watch more and want to watch more. And he didn't do that. So James Washington was one of the few guys that I thought was impressive on the day, 5'11", 213. Boy, everyone kept telling me he's built like a running back. He's built like a running back. Boy, is he built like a running back. Man, he's got running back build written all over him. And he's stocky, but boys, he physically built. He was physical at the Senior Bowl. Watched him a ton at the Senior Bowl, tossing guys around like yesterday's trash. And he caught the football very effectively, snatched it out of the air on numerous occasions. The 40 time wasn't electric, but it wasn't terrible. He's right around the 4.54 range. He's a guy, though, that I look at and I say he probably plays faster than that 40 time because he got behind guys very often at Oak State. So I like him a lot. I like James Washington a lot. And then there's another guy, Auden Tate. I don't know anything about this guy. Out of Florida State, 6'5", 228. DJ said, look, forget about his times. Before he ran, DJ said, forget about his times. I wrote at the top of my breakdown for him, don't look at his times. Because, and Mike Mayock said, look, the dude had like 18 career catches, but 10 of them were for touchdowns. And I'm like, okay, that's got my attention. That means he's a big body guy that can use his frame and maybe use his catch radius to go up and high point the football as a fade guy in the end zone. There's some value for that in the league. And so his times were horrible, but at 6'5", 228, if he can go up and high point the football and use his body to shield away defenders, there may be a place in the league for a guy like Auden Tate out of Florida State. But for me, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 receivers on my list. 2 of them did not show up and compete at the combine. Again, I'm assuming injury here with Dante Pettis and Anthony Miller. But of the 19 guys, I walked away, and maybe when I put the tape on, I'll have a different perspective, but I walked away out of 19 guys. I walked away impressed with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys out of 19 at the receiver position. So there's work to be done at this position, and there's ground to be gained by some guys that either didn't put their best foot forward today or guys that didn't perform at the combine altogether. So wasn't that impressed with the receivers. But, again, the tape might tell a different story. I told you, I don't want to put too much stock into the combine because we've seen guys have porous combines and then go on to have good NFL careers. So I don't want to put too much stock into this. The tape speaks for itself, and I've got a lot of tape to watch on these receivers to see what kind of value they bring to the table. A nice feel-good story, Shaquem Griffin, the brother of Shaquille Griffin, if you remember, who was drafted in the 2nd round by the Seattle Seahawks last year, that looks the part of a big-time NFL starting cornerback. His brother, remember, had a disability that he was born with, where he had, and something happened with the umbilical cord and kind of tying around his arm, and the same thing happened to Wisconsin tight end Troy Fumagalli, where he didn't lose his entire hand from the wrist down. Fumagalli only lost 1 finger, but it's something that happens when in the womb the umbilical cord gets wrapped around and you kind of lose some of the blood flow to specific areas of your body, and he actually had to get his hand amputated from the wrist down. And so if you've ever seen Shaquem Griffin play, he's got it's almost like a stick. You just got bone, essentially, with no wrist and no fingers. And he's an intriguing, fascinating story. And the guy's a hell of a football player, number one. But they televised him doing the bench press, and it was fascinating to watch. He had a contraption on his arm that allowed him to grip the bar with the arm that, obviously doesn't have any fingers in a hand. So he put the contraption on the bar, then he put his other hand on the bar, and he was able to bust out 20 reps of 2 1/4. Man, that's impressive, man. It blew me away. That's just insane. I mean, we know guys like Orlando Brown who have 2 functional arms that's 360 pounds that can't put it up 15 times. This guy put it up 20 times. Just amazing. And then another story that came from the combine today was Maurice Hurt, Michigan defensive lineman, had a heart condition that popped up during the screening during the combine, and so he was sent home to have more tests. He's not going to be able to participate, and so that's a little scary. We've had this happen before with Star Lotulelei. We've had it happen before with Nick Fairley. Those guys ended up checking out and being able to go on to play. Now, Nick Fairley's condition flared up again, and he didn't play for the Saints this season for the most part. So that's a scary situation for Maurice Hurst. I'm glad they found it now so that, if there need to be precautionary measures taken, they can do so. But was really looking forward to seeing him perform, as he's one of the top defensive linemen in a first-round guy, and he still ultimately may be, but we're not going to see him at the Combine in day number 3. But to wrap up day number 2, the tight ends came out in group number 6, and I was really impressed by the tight ends, more so than I thought I was going to be when coming into this process. Mark Andrews, tight end out of Oklahoma, and let me preface this with none of these guys for the most part block. I'll tell you the ones that reportedly block. I can't confirm nor deny. I haven't watched enough tape, but we know how the tight end game is now. It's a totally different game than it was 10 years ago. These dudes don't block. Most of them are flexed out. They're split out wide. They're in the slot, but they're not in tight in a traditional in-line Y formation as a tight end. For the most part, these guys are pass catchers, not blockers. But Mark Andrews, rarely in line at Oklahoma, 6'5", 256, ran a 4.67. Remember, 256 pounds, 4.67. That's impressive, and he caught it well. All right. For me, he stole the show with the complete package. If you're talking catching the football and then showing off athletic prowess. Now, Mike Gesicki is going to be the guy that everybody's going to talk about because of what he did running and jumping. 41.5-inch vert, which is stupid for a tight end, especially a guy 6'5", 247. And then a 4.54 40. I knew Mike Gesicki was talented. I didn't think he was going to run that fast. And then to make matters even better for himself, 22 reps of 2.25. So he really helped himself. And then he caught the football extremely well too. So he was a guy that really stood out amongst this tight end group. 6'4", 250 for Hayden Hurst, a guy that is extremely gifted. He's an interesting guy out of South Carolina, a baseball player that was drafted and tried to make it in the majors. Didn't work out. Spent 3 years trying to do that. And so this guy's 25 years old by the time the next upcoming NFL season gets underway. So, teams are going to look at that. But at the end of the day, this guy blocks a little, is an exceptional athlete, 4'6", 40, caught everything and looked probably as fluid as anybody out there on the football field. It's no wonder Mike Mayock has him as his number 1 tight end. I liked what I saw out of Hayden Hurst a lot. Now, I'm dying to see tape on this guy out of South Carolina. 6'4", 259 pounds. Indiana tight end Ian Thomas ran a 4.74. Not bad for a guy that's 6'4", 259. I thought his movement skills were pretty good as well. Not as good as Andrews, Gesicki, or Hurst, but still at 6'4", 259, 4.74, not bad at all. 6'5", 265, Jordan Thomas out of Mississippi State. He ran a 4.74, and again, these guys are big, man. There aren't any of these flex tight ends. Like Evan Ingram was like 220 pounds last year, 230 pounds. I think Njoku was kind of big, but he was still in that 237 range. I mean, these are big. These are grown-ass men here at 250 plus, putting up 4.74. That's impressive. And keep in mind, this guy was a receiver at one point at Mississippi State this season at 6'5", 265. So Jordan Thomas is unique in that sense that he actually played out wide as a receiver. But again, in this day and age, you shouldn't be surprised that these tight ends have that capability. A lot of these guys are exclusively pass catchers and not really asked to block that much in the run game. Will Dissly out of Washington is one of the few guys that really sticks his hand in the dirt, in line, and will block you and move you in the run game. 6'4", 262. I actually was impressed with him catching the football because in this league, if you can find a blocking tight end that can also catch, you can find you a guy that can do both. You got something. Because those are the guys you sneak into the field on 3rd and 1 or in goal line packages, and you're thinking, okay, this guy's just blocking, and then he acts as if he's blocking and blocking down, and then he flares out into the flats on a delay, and all of a sudden he's wide open. He's one of those sneaky good guys that can block and catch it. He helped himself today. I walked away really impressed. And this is an ex-defensive lineman that's only been a tight end for 2 years. So I think there's upside with Will Dissly as well. And then finally, Dallas Goedert, tight end out of South Dakota State, who's supposed to be one of the premier tight ends in his draft class, did not participate on the field, didn't run his 40, didn't catch the football, did, however, hit the bench, 23 reps of 2.25. That was the best of this group. So he's big at 6'5", 256. We know he's strong at 23 reps of 2.25. Now the question is, can you run? And we know he can catch the football. So anxious to see what Dallas Goedert looks like. But tight end group really impressed me. So that was day 2, essentially, of the NFL Combine. I said I was going to mention Lamar Jackson once more. Really up and down day for him. I just thought he put too much pressure on himself. But he made the right decision. He is a quarterback, and he does have a unique skill set, and I think he will be fine at the next level. But that's all the time I got for you today. Tomorrow, at the conclusion of day 3, defensive linemen and linebackers will actually be able to converse and chop it up. I'll be able to take comments, and we'll be able to have a long discussion about the first 3 days of the Combine and what you guys will be looking forward to in day 4 with the defensive backs. But I've got a basketball game to attend, so I've got to run. But that's day 2 of the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine, quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section, not in the discussion. I know you guys have been talking, conversing back and forth. I want to know what you guys think. Leave your comments after this video has processed in the comment section. I'd love to see what you guys have to say about some of the prospects that we were able to lay eyes on in day 2 of the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine. If you haven't already done so, check out the website, louietnetwork.net. Check out the podcast, the Louie T Network podcast, on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on the site. And also, if you haven't done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content in 2018 and beyond. Remember, we're changing the game, period. Okay, we're changing the game over here, period. You guys know the game. You know my name. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Thanks for joining me.